With the super chat says, just wondering why you guys aren't too fond of 444. It's very much a black empowerment album. It just, you know what? Again, I think I said this on the Patreon. I think it's more so the production for me, and maybe I'm just so used to hearing Jay over some really dope production, and it's just not there for me. I'm not a huge No ID guy. I'm not. I wasn't even when he was making Common albums. So it's kind of a snooze fest in that sense. And it's not like Jay has the voice to carry you over subpar beats either. So, and just the songs
Oh, I
are just
never thought
kind
of
of
it like that. That's the problem. Is that like vocally, he's not the guy that can have like the beats be suspect or be bland.
yeah.
Yeah, he needs that soulfulness or like that high kick. Yeah.
And I feel like it just brings the best out in him too. You can hear his intensity when the production's at a certain level. Like when you hear him on a public service announcement, he sounds different than he sounds on, Moment of Clarity. And
You
see,
know what?
Moment of Clarity, he's lyrically there, but that production really affects that song. If you put another beat on Moment of Clarity, that song goes up 2 or 3 levels.
You know what I just had like an epiphany about? If he were to do an album, I would want Westside Gunn to executive produce it.
Me too. I was thinking that when I was actually listening to 10 the other day. Because I know I said Ninth Wonder, and I would like to hear that too. But shit, I could hear Jay over those beats that was on 10 this year.
I just want Westside picking like helping him with the track selection.
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean? Like sometimes like an executive producer, sometimes the best thing an executive producer does is run down the beats with the artist. You know what I'm saying? Like, ooh, no, I hear you on that. Like spit something for me right quick. Let me hear you on that right quick. You know what
I
I'm
feel
saying?
like just listening to like when Westside executive produces something like From a King to a God, right? I feel like
Mm-hmm.
the process at that point is more so one of the things where it's like Westside's listening to, he's doing the tough work of listening to all the tracks. And let's just
Yep.
say he's listening to 60 tracks and he's
Yep.
picking 20 that he's going to go take over to Conway.
Yep.
And then
That's
they
exactly
kind
what it
of go
sounds like to
from
me.
there. You know what I mean? Because that's a real
Because
rigorous process to sit
I
there
mean,
and listen to tracks. I hated that part of the process back in the day when I was an MC. I'd rather sit there with my guy and make a song from scratch and just kind of go from there as opposed to just going through listening to tracks and ideas over and over. That's a hard part of the process. And
it
Westside
is.
excels in that.
Well, From a King to a God is Conway's best project because of some of those track selections. Like we really haven't heard him rhyme over a lemon or a juvenile hell or a Jesus Crisis
Yeah.
since then, really. Like the beat selection on there is wonderful. And here's what I mean, it's wonderful. It's very it's not liquid swords by any stretch of the imagination, but in the way that the beats fit the artist so well.
Right.
Yeah.
DJ Bruce Almighty. Shout out to Bruce Almighty in the building. He says, think about your top hip hop albums. Where does the first female album by a female MC land? Top 5,
Hardcore.
20, 10, 20, 50. I say that all the time, Bruce Almighty. We talk all of this, okay, well, include a female, whatever. I get that. We talk about the best hip hop albums all the time. Rap albums. So Lauryn Hill's out of here, right? That's an
Yeah.
R&B album. Rap albums. Where does the first female rap album land? Is it even in the top 50? And I say that respectfully.
You think Hardcore is a top 50 rap album?
I think it
Or
is, and it'll be
Funkified?
the first one. I think hardcore, not Functified. I love Functified personally, but objectively, I can't do it.
I'm cool. I would be cool with Hardcore being placed somewhere between 40 to 50. I could see that.
I could see that too. Is hardcore better than the Marshall Mathers LP? I'm sorry.
Yes.
DJ
In
Bruce
my
Almighty
opinion,
with the super
it's got
chat
more
says,
classic records.
"Hey, I'm not gonna argue."
I
DJ
know
Bruce
you're not going to argue. We all know that shit.
DJ Bruce Almighty with the super chat says, "Random. Why doesn't Luda get the bad rap as a label owner that everyone else does? No one was happy on DTP, and those who were successful left." Good question. I don't know.
You're right. Chingy complained. I mean, you see what happened to Chains as soon as he left. I mean, Chains became a all-time big-time star as soon as he left.
And he never
Shauna.
really quote unquote complained, but the fact that Chainz never really worked with Luda on his run speaks volumes. You had that incident at the BET Hip Hop Awards where, Shauna said that, somebody over there blocked her from being in the cipher. I mean, they're all good now. I'm not trying to stir up anything, but just, just going through history. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know.
Mm,
I don't know. Jay Short with the super chat says, JD is the reason that Lauren is the female GOAT. He fumbled the ball with the Brat. Y'all think the Brat was in line?
Funkified's
This is
pretty
my
special,
thing with the
Mike.
Brat.
I mean, she beat everybody there with it. Like, she was the first one to go platinum. It was 94. I think, and I hate to say it, is like, 94 is a funny time if you don't know what your identity is yet, because it's like,
that's where I was gonna
man, you got Snoop and Dre still having their impact and effect, but Wu-Tang is here now, and Biggie and Nas have just popped up. And so I think he tried too hard to make her like Snoop and Big all at once.
Mm-hmm.
And the music was great, but the second album, I think he just kind of like let her go. Well, and I don't know if that was like the progress, because like Another Tantrum's just not that good.
This is what I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna piggyback on that because we've spoken about this on the show before. I think the Brat just didn't have a solid foundation because once again, it sounded like, well, I remember Jermaine Dupri saying it might have been on his T.I. interview. He was on T.I.'s podcast. It was one of these interviews. He said that he had the Brat sitting around for about a year because they were trying to figure out the direction and which way they were going to go with it. And I guess, the whole G-Funk thing kind of was popping at that time. And that's the, door that she jumped through. But when G-Funk was gone, it was like, okay, well, what do we do next? And she didn't have a solid foundation for herself. So it was kind of like a double-edged sword that Funkdafied was so successful. Because if it wasn't, then you kind of, could change up or do whatever. But Funkdafied was such a success off of an identity that kind of really wasn't hers. You know what I mean? So it's like, how do you follow that up? If you have your own identity and it's not successful or is successful, it's easy to follow that up. I mean, even with Kim, with Hardcore, she could follow that up with Notorious K.I.M. because she had a lane that was hers.
She identified herself instantly.
Yeah, she did. And, to the point where her identity was so strong, it threw Foxy off of her game. With China Doll, she was kind of sounding like Kim a little bit, unnecessarily.
Which is
and
crazy
she didn't
because
have to
it's
do
like
that
hurt China Doll.
Yeah. So I think that if anything, the Brat kind of suffered from, lack of identity. And maybe, just maybe, if the Brat could have waited, and you never know when things are going to happen. Like, I don't know what's going to happen in 2024. But if somehow she could have waited on Missy to get to the party first, then maybe that could have been the lane. Maybe the Brat could have worked with Missy on her second album, but Another Tantrum was 96? And Missy came around 97? So.
I mean, they did Sock It To Me.
Oh, yeah, they did. But I'm saying, they did Sock It To Me. If she would have been making music like that around that time, she would have been able to find a whole new
you want to know
direction.
what? I mean, as crazy as it may seem, because she's the first female artist to go platinum, was signing to Jermaine Dupri the best thing for her career in the long run?
I think
in the long run.
I think
do you? Okay.
I think
I mean, I'm just asking questions. I'm not.
No. I feel where you're coming from, but I think so because I don't know if anybody would have even been able to give her a Funkdafied. It's a gift to even get something like that, even if it didn't happen over and over.
You were right about that. It's rare that somebody makes an album that great, male or female, like period, where you just got something that you can play from beginning to the end, even if
too. Like, that shit's a timestamp. You play Funkdafied now or give it to you now, like, niggas know that shit. It gets it jumping.
Fired Up was my jam too, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Michael
Williams. Bangers on there.
Michael Williams with the super chat said, "Who's the better lyricist, Andre or Mos Def?" Woo. If we talking about just pure lyrics, word for word, I think Andre to me is the better MC overall, but if we're talking straight lyrics, I gotta go Mos Def. Take my
I'm,
A hat off, and you know what I mean. Like, just gotta keep it
I'm
real.
actually gonna echo your sentiments exactly, Mike. A better overall MC for me would be Andre, but if we just talking that straight up and down lyricism, it's most for me.
Yeah, cause that verse on Hurricane is tough to
He
top
just
lyrically.
sometimes when he raps, Mike, I told him when we played Peppers the other day, it's like he doesn't have the best verse on there, but when he goes ballistic, it's just ballistic. And it's that Lauryn Hill type of level where it's like this one of the best guys I ever heard rap. I don't care how often he rap. When he raps like this,
He's mesmerizing.
he's
Pause.
mesmerizing when he raps like that. And you want to know, this is what I mean. Peppers is what made me push No Fear of Time back.
Mm,
Because it's like, oh, you
this is
gonna
what y'all
rap
could have
like
done.
this? You two gonna rap like this on this record? Oh, that's what we doing?
Jay Short with the super chat. Shit, we need Westside Gunn executive producing a Black Star out.
Apparently.
Right. Jay Short with the super chat says, why are we pretending that we don't hear Big's cadence and inflections on hardcore, particularly on No Time, Dreams, and Drugs? Has to take some luster off. But see, that's the thing too about female MCs, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole again. We seem to give female MCs a pass for having ghostwriters.
Wrong. Nobody said nothing when you made that J comment with the future track reference. This is exactly what Mike's talking about. We literally just had a show, this show,
The
where
same
Mike
show.
referenced Jay-Z, referencing Future, and you all said nothing. But we want to bring up Kim, referencing of all people, the notorious B.I.G. I'm going to tell you what, if I am going to reference somebody, you get what I'm saying? Like if I'm starting my rap career, fuck male or female, Mike. If I'm starting my rap career and I'm going to reference somebody's inflection and cadence, oh, well, she took from the very best. Like
Well,
literally the very best.
who else ever came forth and said they wrote for Kim? And I'm asking this seriously. I'm not trying to be funny.
Did Mr. Cheeks write the jump off? Have you ever heard
I've
any of
never
that?
heard that. I've
Me
never
neither.
heard that. I don't know, but I've
I've
never
heard
heard.
Diddy talk about how she writes. There's footage of her in the studio writing, just like there's footage of her Nicki in the studio writing.
Because the thing is,
I
man,
know Kim, right?
in my personal opinion,
Who wrote the All About the Benjamins verse, Mike? That's all I need to know.
well, Big was
Who wrote the
alive for
Quiet
that,
Storm
right?
remix verse? Because Big is gone.
Yeah, Big's gone then. Because to
Big's
me,
gone.
her best feature run in '99, Big wasn't there for
Big's
that.
gone. That's what
Yeah.
I mean. Her best bars for me, like has an MC lyrically, and has an overall MC. Well, her best run as an overall MC happened after Big died. Now the best songs were on hardcore, but her as an MC, Mike,
Yeah.
All About the Benjamins verse, crazy, Mike.
Well, I was gonna talk about her play around verse on that was that Black Thought not Black Thought Black Rock. You don't want to play around. You don't want. She killed that shit. Her
She
feature
killed
run.
Despacio.
Yeah,
She killed Despacio too.
yeah. Her
She
feature
killed
run during that era was crazy.
Yeah, her spit game around that time. No, she rapping her ass off. Mike
Even
Big was
on the
nowhere around. She out here rapping her ass off.
you remember the song that was on Born Again, that Biggie song? That shit was
Yeah.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, who wrote that?
That
stuff?
beat was crazy.
Yeah,
Beat
beat was crazy. The L Webb with the super chat, and we're gonna get to the actual subject, man. This has been a great conversation, though. Says Lady of Rage could have been up there too, but Suge waited way too long to capitalize.
You see how we keep having this conversation about how stuff keep happening. Something happened to the Brat. Something happened to Shauna. Something happened later.
Mishandled. Women, it seems like female MCs' careers have been mishandled.
Hold on. So this is what I mean. The truth is in the middle. About 45 minutes ago, you were like the crop's weak. Is the crop weak, or is the crop not being tended to properly?
But
you want a
you know
flower
what?
to grow, it needs some water and some sunlight out in this motherfucker.
But you know
And
what's
some
interesting, though? You know
Play
what's
some
interesting?
music. Play some Miles Davis for the flower. Let the flower grow.
You know what's interesting, though? The woman that actually has probably album for album the best catalog, she was in control of her career. She was a writer, producer. They gave her a label situation at Elektra. Missy was able to kind of call her own shots. She didn't have to depend on, somebody to put her out. And she actually made the albums.
No, here's how you need to look at it. The person that got the most coaching is actually the person that turned out the best, and that's Kim. The person that actually got the cultivation turned out the best in the overall artistry of the female crop. That's what I mean. When you said the Shauna thing, that really hit me because it's like, oh, we're not tending to the crop, so you can't necessarily call the crop weak when it's not being tended to properly. It's like, you can't, how about this, Mike? You can't sit up there and grow something that needs to be watered every day and then water it on Monday and then water it again on Thursday and wonder why the fuck it's dying. It's dying because you're not watering it and giving it sunlight and paying attention to it the way that you should. So
The
is the
interesting
crop
thing
weak or we're
about
not tending to our crop properly?
the interesting thing about Shauna, and we'll move on, is the fact that we seen it. They came up together. It wasn't like Luda was on and Shauna was, trying to track
No,
him down
she
for a
right there
deal.
from the jump.
She was on the single that before he had a deal at all. Like, I don't know if a deal was in sight, maybe it was, but at the end of the day, when they made "What's Your Fantasy" with Sean Dre, it was he had no deal. He was truly an independent artist. He was working at the radio station. Only the radio station, at least in Atlanta, that he was working for was playing that song. The rival radio station was not playing his song because he was not signed yet. And she was around for all of that. She was around for the whole ride. She deserved better than that, in my opinion. And maybe I don't know the full scope of things, but this wasn't like somebody that they met on the road when they were already on. You know what I mean?
Hey, I know this guy pulled up one day at Manifest in Charlotte, North Carolina with this album called Incognito, wanting to talk to my boss, Mike Slade, about getting some consignment. There was 2 chicks with him. I was in high school, going to college. Or was I back from college around that time? But that was them. I remember I was in Manifest when he put Incognito in there.
Yeah.
So it's like I remember him coming up to Charlotte and hustling. I remember the 2 badass chicks that was with him.
I bet. Yo, somebody in the chat says that Atlanta owes a lot to Memphis, and that is 100% correct. I'm actually working on something about that, but yes, Atlanta owes a lot to Memphis hip-hop. Shit, at this point, the whole game owes a lot to Memphis hip-hop, to be real. But yes, Atlanta owes a lot to Memphis and Miami, and we've never shied away from that. We give credit where credit's due. I don't think anybody's ever really refuted that.
So it's funny, when I was doing the Mirror Music podcast with my guy Andrew, we did Bombs Over Baghdad recently, and I was explaining to him how that's not new Atlanta, that's the original Atlanta. I was like, we grew up on the booty shake and the bass. I was like, that's Outkast at its origins. I was like, that's what people understand. If you're not from Atlanta, like, that's what our music sounded like before Outkast started rapping.
Yeah.
It was all the 808s and the drums and the high kicks that's on Bombs Over Baghdad. So I love Bombs Over Baghdad because it's like, that's a roots Atlanta record, actually. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what hip hop sounded like in a lot of ways. It was kind of churchy and kind of like ratchet. That's what Bombs Over Baghdad is.
And at the time, Outkast, and believe it or not, for a lot of people outside, they wouldn't, understand this, but Outkast was kind of getting pegged with not really being the true Atlanta sound, right?
Yeah.
And so, it was the first time they really jumped on something with that tempo and showed that, we can jump on stuff that we were inspired by growing up too. So,
well, they changed the sound because when they made their sound, that's what made people flock hip-hop wise.
Right.
And so everybody that came before them obviously felt some type of way about these kids fresh out of high school.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
They were kind of rapping, I don't want to say East Coast influence, but in a way that was palatable to East Coast and, kind of like the hieroglyphics and all of that stuff too. That really wasn't the Atlanta lingo. Like, for people who know, like, groups like Ghetto Mafia was what Atlanta sounded like. And for real, like, Goody Mob, I think that's why when Soul Food hit, it really hit in the city because those guys were really speaking Atlanta slang. Not to say that Dre and Big weren't, but it was a little different. Like, when you hear Cujo and Gibb and T-Mo specifically speak and talking about the places they at, it was hitting a little bit different. You know what I mean?
I think Southern Playalistic has a lot of those elements. Goody Mob is just more personable on Soul Food than Outkast is on Southern Playalistic.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think there was a conscious effort on the first Outkast album and the first Goody Mob album to make sure that we put Atlanta on the map, like literally.
Right. And to do that, you have to do some things that are more universal and not local, Yeah. So